All right, so I didn't really explain a little bit about the menus. I think this might help too, thinking about this modeling menu. So there's all these options up here, but I'm going to be focusing mainly on mesh, edit mesh, and mesh tools because I want you guys to feel free also to explore and try using these tools and seeing what you can create with them. I'm going to show you the ones that I think are the most important. I'm going to show you how to use them, but I'm glad to answer any questions if you have specific questions in addition to your kind of experimenting and exploration. So mesh typically refers to a object level operation. So there's things like under mesh, there's combine, which I think I showed some of you guys. If we have two objects, for example, this cube and that cube, you can see they're two different objects. I can select both of them, and since this is an object level operation, I can go to combine, and now they're actually, even though they're separate pieces, they're actually technically one object. I can select one and select them both because it's one object. If I go to scale them, rotate them, and if I want to actually put that pivot in the center, I can go to modify, center pivot. Now that pivot's in the center. So mesh is object level operations for the most part. Edit mesh has to do with component level operations for the most part. Again, exceptions, but it's kind of an easy enough way to think about how you might apply them. So this will make sense in a second when I show you our next tool. And then mesh tools typically are in their own group. Insert edge loop is a very important tool, very fun. Okay, so I'm gonna create a sphere. I'm gonna show you guys what we can do with this next tool. So insert edge loop, super powerful, very useful. The other tool that we use a lot is called the extrusion tool, and this one is a component level operation instead of the mesh tools. We're going to be going into the edit mesh. So I'm going to first go into face mode. I'm going to select one of these faces and show you what the extrusion tool is all about. Extrusion tool will pull a face or a shape out of another face. That's weird to explain until I'm just going to show you. I'm going to go into face mode again, select a face, and go to edit mesh, extrude, and it's going to give you this new manipulator, which you might actually recognize some of those pieces from the other manipulators. There's arrows for move, and there's squares or boxes for scale, and there's this ring for rotations. Now what that manipulator actually means is it's going to move in relation to that shape. So you can see as opposed to actually moving this, it's all still attached, I can instead go to edit mesh, extrude, and pull that shape out based on that rotation, based on the direction of that polygon. Each polygon has a forward facing, what's called a normal. But so that's which direction this thing goes. I can also just switch to my move tool if I want to move it in a world space instead of that polygon space. I can go to world space, and whatever is absolute forward or absolute side to side, absolute Y, and I can move that stuff around. An important thing to know about when you're extruding, as soon as you extrude, move that component because it's the same thing as duplicating. It'll just appear right in the same spot, and if you forget you did that, then you won't know that there's this guy hiding in there. What? Yeah, so as soon as you extrude, move. I'm going to repeat that a whole bunch when I come and see you guys on Tuesday. So let's see what extrusions are actually useful for. I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to use these history nodes to make it kind of more to my liking. Looks good. And I can go into face mode. I'm going to grab this face, this face, and that face. And hopefully this looks good enough. I'm going to go to extrude. So you saw how I can extrude one shape out of the other. But what's cool is, like I said, this is a relative motion. This is not absolute world motion like this, where everything will move this direction or that direction. You can see it's kind of penetrating through itself. If I go to T, I can pull this back up, as you can see, QWERTY. It's kind of coming together. But it's going to move in relationship to what's forward for that particular shape. And this is why it's good to spin around your model when you make a selection. You can actually see I accidentally selected this guy. I don't do that. Go back to face and hold Control to deselect. Okay, I'm going to go extrude and boom. All right, that's not actually that great. I'm going to try again. Let's do like 14. It's a good number. And I'm going to grab this, that, every other one pretty much, and I can extrude. But what you can see is I can use this as a very powerful tool to make something like a gear, like a robot gear or something like this. I can move things in relation to what's forward for that specific piece. So if I go back to this and I start scaling it, you can see wherever the manipulator is which one you're going to be affecting. So here's the manipulator. I'm going to look at just this polygon. So I'm going to go scale. You can see that they all scale in relation to themselves, as opposed to if I go to scale, it's going to scale all of them in this world space like this. As opposed to T, I can go back here. So the extrusion tool, very cool in getting shapes away from that primitive shape. You can totally change them entirely how they look. Now, where this gets interesting is when we start combining those two. So I'm going to show you guys an example of what might be a useful way of combining them. Let's say I want to create a chair. Let's go ahead and create a cube that's flat like this. I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and create that, or just pause. And then I'm going to go to Mesh Tools. I'm going to go Insert Edge Loop Tool. I want to make a chair, so I'm going to drop an edge loop right here, right here, right here, and right here. Now, I'm kind of not following this rule I gave you guys earlier, which is as soon as you drop an edge loop, make the change that edge loop's for. What I'm actually doing is that I'm thinking ahead, and I'm trying to use edge loops to create the specific face that I want, which for this chair is going to be these legs. So I'm actually going to come down here on the bottom, hold Shift, and I'm clicking. I'm not doing a selection box like this, because what will happen is it'll actually select everything inside of that box, including this top part. So just make sure that you're holding Shift and clicking once. Okay, I've got those 4 faces. Because I've made those faces with those edge loops, now I can go to Edit Face, or Edit Mesh, and Extrude. And actually for this, since I know I just want it to go world space down, I don't want to worry about which is the local, like the specific face that the direction that these polygons are facing. I'm just going to press W. I'm just going to move it in world space down, and now I have the legs of a chair. Or maybe this one's a table. This one's more like a table. But if I wanted it to be a chair, I go to Face Mode again, and I'll select this one, and this one, spin around just to make sure that I have the correct selection. And actually, another way to check this would be if I press 5, this is shaded mode. This is what you guys are used to. But if I press 4, I'll go into wireframe mode, and I can see what's selected. Looks good. Spin around a little bit. I'll go back to 5. And now I'll go back to Edit Mesh, Extrude. Again, I'm going to switch to just my Move tool by pressing W, because I wasn't really trying to move this in the specific polygon facing, but now I have this very impractical chair. But you can see how I can start to use that. So I'm going to take this and delete it, because I'll make another one. But I can also show you how, maybe for like this started off as a cube actually, but I can grab that face and this face. So I have his arms. I can actually press 4 to go back into the wireframe. Those are the only ones I have selected. That looks good. I want to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and you can see that it's going to be looking at this one as the one I'm going to be editing, even though that other one's going to move in its own local space. I can also grab this square and kind of scale that down a little bit. Yeah, look at that arm. Now, another way I can think about this is I extruded this out to the wrist. Now I can use the Insert Edge Loop tool to kind of carve away. I got that main shape that I was looking for. I can kind of carve away this arm into something a little more, this is really quick and just an example. That's a weird looking guy, but maybe that gives you some ideas. Let's go back to this wine glass. All right. I went ahead and made a better one. Took my time a little bit. But what I want you to notice too is this time I made sure there was even distribution of these edge loops vertically. I kind of tried to make it even. I don't want it to be too dense in one area and not very dense in another, because I don't have an equal amount of detail, which makes it kind of hard if I want to layer in certain details at certain places. It's kind of just a good habit to get into. However, so what can I use this extrusion tool with this wine glass to improve it? Well, one way would be to actually use it to, instead of extrude something out, I can also extrude inwards. So I want to make this an actual glass. I can go to Face Mode, grab these top faces. I'm going to go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and instead of using this, again, I don't really want to use it that way. I want to switch to R, my Scale tool. I'm going to scale it down to be about the size of the rim. So same idea, I could have just extruded this upwards, but instead I'm scaling it inwards. So I'm going to go back here and scale it down to be about the size of the rim. And if I go to move this, you can see that I could move it down, but I kind of get this really sharp edge. I want to retain this lip that's going on. Lip action right here, that stuff. So I'm going to go back, select this guy one more time, and I'm going to extrude and move it downwards and maybe scale it in a little bit. And now I start to get this concavity. So I'm going to do that again really so you guys can watch that. Grab that face, I extrude it in, and then I went to edit mesh, extrude it again, and I moved it down and I scaled it to be a little bit smaller. If I wanted to take my time, I could press 4 to go back into that wireframe and maybe try to make it match up with these edge loops on the outside that I have. And I can go to edit mesh, extrude again. I'm going to move that down to be about the same height as that. And I can scale that inward so it's not poking out the sides. Maybe I extrude one more time. I just press G that time to save myself a little bit of time of the menu. Going into those menus, and now I have this beautiful wine goblet. So if that was confusing, I have a great exercise for you guys to try out. I want you to create a cube, and I'm going to scale it to be this big, flat, fat cube. And we're going to make these Incan pyramids. So I want you guys to practice doing this. Definitely, this is a great exercise to wrap your head around what you can do with the extrusion tool. So go into right-click, face mode, and I'm going to select this top face, maybe spin my camera around, make sure I have only the right thing selected. I'm going to go to edit mesh, extrude. I'm going to switch straight to my scale tool. I'm going to scale this inwards. Okay, now I'm going to edit mesh, extrude again. I'm going to switch to my move tool. I'm going to move it up. Now I'm going to press G this time to repeat my last tool, which was extrude. So I'm going to press G once. Make sure you only press it once, because every time you extrude, you want to move, which I'm going to scale it in. And then I'll press G and switch to my move tool, and I'll move it up. Then I'll press G, I'll switch to my scale tool, scale it down. Press G, switch to my move tool, and move it up. Then I'll do this again a million times. But this is a great exercise to kind of wrap your head around what this is good for, which is lots of stuff, like Incan pyramids. All of the exercises you see me doing in these videos, I'd love for you guys to try out. At the minimum, try out those examples. Try to make a wine glass, try and make this Incan pyramid, try making a chair, try making a vase, and take your time with it. This is a brand new skill. Don't get frustrated if it's weird. I'm actually going to reverse this because this is an Incan pyramid. I would figure we need to sacrifice something. So I'm going to press G to repeat my last tool, scale it in. And this time I'm going to press G, and when I move to my move tool, instead of moving up, I'm going to move down. And now I've got this pit. It's on top of a volcano or something, I don't know. Now I'm going to switch back to object mode, and now I have this beautiful object as one piece that I can move around, or I can scale, or maybe I want it to be like a little more fat or skinny. I can do some fun stuff like that. Definitely try all of these exercises. They'll help you get more comfortable. Again, take your time, be patient, and I will see you guys on Tuesday.